What would you do if the truths you've always trusted suddenly felt like strangers? If meaning itself started to slip through your fingers? Fyodor Dostoevsky, the legendary Russian novelist, wrestled with these questions in a world where faith and reason were at war. Dostoevsky believed that the most dangerous lie we tell ourselves is that we are entirely independent, free from moral responsibility, isolated from others, and accountable only to ourselves. This lie, he argued, quietly shapes our beliefs and actions, keeping us trapped in a false sense of freedom while leading us further into isolation. Born in 1821, Dostoevsky was raised in a devout Russian Orthodox household. His father, a doctor serving Moscow's poorest, exposed him early to the harsh realities of inequality and suffering. Yet, as Dostoevsky grew, he faced a society increasingly skeptical of religious authority. Russia was at a crossroads, caught between traditional faith and the emerging modern worldview. Dostoevsky himself embodied this conflict, torn between the moral teachings of his upbringing and the intellectual currents of his time. At the age of 28, Dostoevsky's life took a dramatic turn. Arrested for participating in political discussions against the Tsar, he was sentenced to death. As he stood before the firing squad, waiting for the command to fire, he was suddenly granted a last-minute reprieve. That brush with death changed him forever. Later he reflected, "Life had seemed endless to me until that moment. I felt the fire of existence in a way I had never known." From then on, his writing became an unflinching exploration of human suffering, redemption, and the lies we live by. One of these lies, the most insidious according to Dostoevsky, is the belief that we can live without conscience or accountability. He brings this idea to life through Raskolnikov, the tortured protagonist of Crime and Punishment. Raskolnikov convinces himself that he's extraordinary, a man above ordinary moral rules. This belief leads him to murder, justifying it as a test of his intellectual freedom. But instead of liberation, Raskolnikov finds only guilt, paranoia, and suffering. The lie that he could live as his own judge, free from the constraints of morality, destroys him from within. Dostoevsky saw this same danger in broader society. In The Brothers Karamazov, Ivan Karamazov declares, "If God does not exist, everything is permitted." Ivan believes that without divine authority, humans are free to set their own rules. But Dostoevsky doesn't celebrate this freedom. Instead, Ivan becomes consumed by the emptiness of his own philosophy. Like Raskolnikov, he suffers under the weight of his ideas, proving that the absence of moral accountability doesn't liberate, it isolates and destroys. For Dostoevsky, the lie of independence is a rebellion against the truth of human interconnectedness. His characters repeatedly wrestle with this tension. In Notes from Underground, the narrator tries to assert his freedom by rejecting societal norms, but his isolation only deepens his misery. Similarly, in Demons, characters attempt to break free from shared moral values, only to descend into chaos and despair. Dostoevsky's message is clear: freedom without responsibility isn't freedom at all. It's a kind of self-inflicted exile. So, what's the alternative? Dostoevsky offers a radical answer: humility. True freedom, he believed, comes not from asserting our independence, but from recognizing our interconnectedness. In The Brothers Karamazov, Alyosha, the youngest brother, shows this through his willingness to embrace suffering and humility. Unlike his tormented siblings, Alyosha grounds himself in love and compassion, finding purpose not in pride, but in connection. His path isn't easy, it's filled with pain, but it leads to genuine meaning. For Dostoevsky, humility isn't weakness, it's the courage to admit our dependence on others and to live with a sense of responsibility for the world around us. Pride, by contrast, blinds us. It convinces us that our actions exist in a vacuum and that we owe nothing to others. Dostoevsky believed pride was the root of all lies, leading us to deny the very bonds that make us human. He captured this idea in one of his most powerful lines: "Everyone is responsible to all men, for all men and everything." This isn't just an exaggeration. Dostoevsky wanted us to see that our lives are part of an unbreakable chain, where every thought and action ripples outward, affecting those around us. The idea that we can live solely for ourselves, he argued, is the most dangerous fiction of all. Dostoevsky's own life reflected these beliefs. He endured exile, poverty, illness, and the death of his beloved child. Yet, through his suffering, he found a deeper connection to humanity. "Suffering is the sole origin of consciousness," he wrote, believing that pain strips away illusions and reveals our true selves. In suffering, he saw the potential for empathy, redemption, and a shared humanity. So, what's the biggest lie you tell yourself? According to Dostoevsky, it's the belief that you stand apart from the world, that your choices affect no one but yourself, and that your conscience belongs only to you. This lie, he warned, leads to inner conflict and isolation. Real meaning, he insisted, comes when we move beyond our self-interest and embrace the radical responsibility of being human.